Welcome to another episode of Coffee Time. I'm your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie of Natalie, Kristina Coaching. Coffee Time is a space where I invite you into the everyday, real talk conversations I'm having with the magical humans in my life. My sole aim, SOUL, is to create as genuine a connection as possible over this virtual platform, and I am so excited to be inviting you along for the ride. Together, we laugh, we rant, we introspect, all the good stuff. So without further ado, let's dive in. Today, I'm talking with Kristen Wallace about all things body respect, food freedom, and the ebbs and flows that come with it. Though this topic is out of my professional wheelhouse, it is something I have a lot of personal experience journeying through. We cover a lot of ground, and I am so grateful to have Kristen here to share her expert opinion and insights.
Yes. So my name is Kristen Wallace, and I help moms and women, obviously, as well, to develop food freedom and body trust. And a lot of that ties into relearning what our body's cues are around what types of food we want, and then uncovering old beliefs from childhood that can free us to start to accept and enjoy what our bodies can do outside of what culture wants to push us and narrow us into, quite literally. My word that I've been focusing on this year is expansion in so many different areas in a world that's telling women to don't expand.
I've been dealing with so a lot of people, when they're like into working out and whatever, I feel like in the time that they are, say, having less time to go to the gym and less time to do those things, when you're talking about expanding, like my mind first went to get like swole, you know what I mean? I actually picked up on that. For me, I think when I'm not going to the gym, I'm less focused on my physique. Like, not that I'm like, oh, I gotta increase my pectoral, whatever. Like, it's not like that, but I'm just more aware. So when I'm not going to the gym, my confidence actually increases, and like my libido increases. That could be more to do with like a hormone energy thing, but like a lot of those things actually go up. Whereas for a lot of people, I think those things increase when you are going to the gym and you're working on bettering yourself and this and that. For me, it's almost like when I'm in that environment, I'm like hyper aware of how I'm looking and moving and these sorts of things. And like, it feels peaceful in that moment, but it makes some of those other things feel less accessible.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I haven't fully unpacked it yet. And like, yeah, it could very well just be that when I'm not doing those things, I'm less tuned into it. And so there's also less opportunity to judge it. I don't know. But it came up. I was doing a workshop with Chrissy King at the Glow Up Retreat. And that was one of the things that I picked up on when we were doing this body image workshop. And like radical self-love, I think is what it was on. But it talked a lot about that stuff. Was that it's like I actually feel less secure with myself sometimes when I'm frequently going to the gym versus when I'm not. Yeah,
that's really, really interesting to me, because I think I have heard more people on with the other perspective. I think that it does feel different to them. And so it's interesting to see how things that are pushed as always healthy can sometimes, depending on, where we are, what experiences we are that we've had in life, it can look different for people. And there's no way to be like, oh, well, it's definitely this reason. I think there are so many different reasons that come into play around that, and it's going to look different for everybody. So I think that's really neat that you're aware of that and you're unpacking it and exploring, wonder what that is right there.
I am really excited to be chatting with you about this topic today. Also very grateful that you are here because, like I kind of mentioned before we got started, it is obviously something that's very like relevant and present in my life. And it's also not the thing that I am an expert on or coach people on or that sort of thing. But I know that it is totally in your wheelhouse. So I am excited to get your perspective and just like jam out on this. And so with that, we're really just diving into like the physical body as seasonal. And also I think it's like how our body relates to the community around us and our relationship with food. And so with the topic of seasonal and how that came up is really like, I mean, right now as we're recording this, we're like moving into the summer season. So all over the internet is things on, which is an amazing thing, but like bodies being summer ready and like wear the shorts and wear the bathing suit. Like a beach body is a body that goes to the beach and this sort of thing. And thinking back, like earlier this year, I did some posts on like Christmas and how it can be really hard to integrate with a family when you have food sensitivities or any sort of, you know, things that you're working on around food and body image and being in those environments. And so I got to thinking of the fact that it's kind of compartmentalized, like body image and body awareness is compartmentalized into these seasonal events, as opposed to what I have found more peaceful for myself is reframing it as, how does my body allow me to show up for life, moment to moment, day by day, and these events when it feels aligned for me, and how am I capable, and focusing on those sorts of things.
It is. I think that's a really interesting distinction, that the way that you put it, that bodies are not seasonal. Obviously, what the first thing that comes to mind is, look, I've got a summer body because it's summertime and I have a body, right? But the other thing that you brought out that I think is really interesting is that we are trying to shift that emphasis away from, you know, our bodies being objects, and around the shaming that comes into whether or not you can show up, you know, in this bathing suit or in this certain place. And at the same time, I think sometimes, like you said, what gets lost in that is that the rest of the year is also a time that we can continue to respect our bodies, to continue our journey of self-acceptance. And that may end up translating to love later on. It may not, and that's okay. But to continue to focus on that body respect and the appreciation that our bodies give us year round. You know, whether we choose to, you know, wear shorts or a swimsuit or whatever, whether we choose to or not, we still can continue to respect ourselves 12 months out of the year.
Totally. I love that notion of body respect. I think there's like a lot of talk on the, you know, the social media, everything, because that's like where we live. But a lot of talk around, there's like the one camp of like body positivity and like, you know, radical body love and like all that kind of thing. And then there's the other camp, we'll say, of body neutrality. And personally, I argue that they're actually one and the same. Like body positivity for me is just being really stoked on the fact that I am in a neutral, peaceful place with my body. And like some days, yeah, it might be more like, you know, for me, it's like, oh yeah, look at that tricep, like, oh my goodness, and I did this thing and it's so exciting. And other days it might be like, I don't feel great, I'm bloated. That's okay. It's also okay that I'm gonna sit here and eat ice cream, and tomorrow's another day and I feel fine. But I can get really excited about the fact that I'm now in that place where I can be okay with that. And so that, to me, I could still describe as that, like, self-love or body positivity, because I can finally be excited about being neutral, whereas before those neutral feelings really drag me down. Does that make sense?
That does make a lot of sense. And I had not honestly thought about the term body respect until I read the book by Linda Bacon and Lucy Aphramore, who are, that's Health at Every Size. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with that. I'm just getting more familiar with it just in the last 6 or 7 months. And they wrote a book called Body Respect. And it was just absolutely fascinating. And I loved the reframing of how we view our bodies. Because the fact of the matter is, some of us are never going to love our bodies. Like, oh my gosh, you know, so in love with my body, da da da. I love every curve and dimple and wrinkle and everything. That may work for some people and it may happen for some people, and that's great. And for others, it's not going to happen. But what's neat is that whether, you know, we end up here or we're over here, we can continue to show ourselves respect, whatever that looks like. Whether that's finding a movement that we love. For me, that's being in the gym. I love weightlifting. Whether that's like a yoga practice or walking or whatever, it's something that you enjoy, is showing your body respect. Going to bed early can be showing your body respect. Waking up early can also be. And what's beautiful about it, it's so unique to each individual. And that's what I just love about it, because, oh my goodness, I'm starting to get all, because I'm so excited talking about this, because we're all born so very uniquely, all in different shaped little bodies. Babies come out in all these different shapes and sizes, and we get to continue carrying that into adulthood. And we get to continue honoring our own unique selves in the way that works best for us. And that's a beautiful thing to me.
I love that. And I think when you talk about kind of that journey and figuring out what it is for you and that sort of thing, that has been, I know for a lot of people, like just talking from my own experience, like that has been a huge one that especially has come with these different health diagnoses that I've received over the years, because those kind of launched me into like kind of a sink or swim. Like I had a choice to ignore it and push it aside and like not do very well, or opt in and take up responsibility where I could and start making changes and start learning. And that really for me was a big part of what led to me reframing my relationship with my body and movement and getting curious about those things. And it's definitely like ebbed and flowed over time. I think at first I quit drinking at the same time as all this was happening. So I think I may have supplemented that. I was at the gym like 3 to 4 hours a day. I did not take transit. I walked everywhere. I was so cautious of what I ate. Like looking back, I don't think I was under eating. Like I definitely have periods in my life where that has happened. I'm pretty upfront about it. I don't think I was doing that, but I was like, very much looking at every little detail. And then through that, I kind of I let go the reins a little bit and I'd start eating different things and realized, like, for me, a big one was when I realized, oh, gluten doesn't work for me anymore. And I cut that out. And that, like, I heard someone say, and I really should remember who this was. It was on a podcast that I listened to. And they said that, like, a way to get anyone to start listening to what their body is telling them, whether you want to hear stuff about food or not, is to get them to follow like a restricted meal plan kind of thing. And it's true. For me, at least, it was true, because as soon as I cut out that thing, I was so aware of how my body was reacting to different things. And through that, I've also learned like how it responds to different forms of exercise or the weather. And so, I guess we're talking about seasonal. In that sense, my approach to my body may change depending on the season. But I think that, like, for me, like, heat and MS don't go very well together. But that really comes from that day to day, moment to moment, now having the tools to check in with my body and what it needs and my relationship with food and how I'm nourishing myself and moving forward.
Yeah, that's powerful. Especially when you just said, you're talking about listening to your body and what it needs. I think that is very needed. It's very needed. So many of us, for one reason or another, have lost touch with our bodies. And that can be around hunger and fullness cues. It could be around anxiety and stress and different things like that. And we're just not aware of how our body is feeling. And the mind-body connection is so powerful that even when we don't really understand what's going on in our brains and our minds, our body knows. Our body absolutely knows. And it's just a matter of, well, it's not just a matter of, because it's actually very hard. But it's simply, I'll put it this way, it's difficult, but it's simple when you think about what it is starting to pay attention to how I'm physically feeling. And I think that's really interesting that you said, for you, cutting out the gluten helped you realize how it was impacting you. I think that's a very interesting way to think about it, because my perspective and my approach with my clients is around not cutting things out. Of course, that is not about people that actually do have intolerances and, allergies and things like that. But the fact that you said that it helped you become more aware of your body's cues and how it was feeling is really interesting to me. And I want to think through that some more, because I don't ever want to come with this black and white approach to my clients and to the people that follow me on social media, because it's not black and white at all. And so it's been difficult for me trying to navigate the stormy waters of food freedom, and also this food legitimately, it doesn't make me feel good. And so I think maybe it's about reframing it, instead of like, I'm restricting this because, okay, for instance, Honey Nut Cheerios make my stomach hurt every time I eat them. I have no idea why. Like, I will sit there, chocolate toast crunch, not so. Like, I enjoy that and it doesn't bother me. Honey Nut Cheerios hurt my stomach. But for me, it was a reframing around, like, it wasn't, oh my goodness, I could never ever have Honey Nut Cheerios. It was not saying no to the Cheerios. It was saying yes to my stomach feeling good. So that seems small to reframe it that way, but it actually has a really powerful impact on the way that our mind is processing it, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And I think for me, I would kind of frame it as like, how is this serving me? Certain foods where I have such a strong reaction to them, and it's like, this is not serving me. Like, if this puts me in pain, like for me, if I eat anything with soy, I have like fever-like symptoms, stabbing pains, like for hours and hours afterwards. And so, sometimes you'll hear people say like, okay, if your option is to eat this food or not eat anything, you should probably eat this food because, well, for me, that is not the case. If the food contains any soy related product, it would be better for me to go hungry because the pain is just not worth it. But it took time, like it took eliminating it because my baseline feeling was at a point of like grossness that I couldn't be fully aware of how these things were impacting me, and then trying it again and kind of going through the ebbs and flows to figure out that that's what I was having such a strong reaction to. And I think definitely like it looks different for everyone. Like for some people, the sort of restriction can be helpful. And so for me, where that all kind of started was looking at some of the research that's been going on and was going on at the time of my first diagnosis. And especially once I got my second autoimmune, I was like, okay, there might be a trend here of what kind of foods would negatively impact someone with autoimmune. So it's a lot of the high inflammatory foods and focusing on intake of quality protein and this and that. And so that was my motivation. For other people, they might not have that same thing. And it might, maybe it's worth doing some of the research on that. And then you also get to make an informed decision that works for you in the moment. And so over time, I've eaten dairy again. And I eat, like last night, I had one of those like Daiya frozen pizzas because they're really good in my opinion. And no, they are not strict paleo, but they don't have soy and they don't have corn and some of these other things that I know for me are non-negotiable no's. And so I've learned how to kind of reapproach that. But it's a process and it's individual and it's like that bio-individuality thing. And I really like that. And it's like everyone's own journey. But I think for me, the big thing was like being open to the information and then being able to implement it as it felt right and also manageable for me.
I like that it was, like you said, it was a process for you. It was a personal process. And what I'm hearing from you is that it sounds like you have a sense of freedom around the choices that you've made. Not necessarily somebody coming along and shaming you, well, you should take better care of your body. Like there's so many different shame messages that come along, and health gets elevated to this moral, what's the word? Pursuit. I said surpoot in my head. I said surpoot. Pursuit, to this moral pursuit, which it absolutely isn't. Everyone's journey is looking different. And just because someone is choosing to, start to relearn their body's cues and things like that doesn't make them morally superior. And so I hear this sense of freedom in your voice around that. And that's really powerful. That's really powerful.
So I haven't thought of it that way before. I think maybe because it was such a gradual process and like, and I'll be totally honest, when I first started, it was super strict because, for me with that second, so it was 2012, I found out I was type 1 diabetic. And then 2013, I got sober. And 5 months after that, I was diagnosed with MS. And that's when this food journey really started, as there was a lot of things going on at that time. And so I don't think I was fully tuned in. And I went ultra strict for a while. I would not eat the things that the book said not to eat and, that sort of thing. And so I wasn't hyper aware because I don't think for me, I definitely hear about a lot of people, and I'm assuming you might correct me after if I'm wrong, but people who are actually on a pursuit of finding food freedom. I don't think I even at that time knew what that topic was. I wasn't in the same communities that I am on social media now. I was really just thinking I have decided I don't want to die. What can I do to make this better? And so that's where it came from. But then all of those things fell into place such that now I have, I guess I have some amount of a food freedom. And I'll be the first to say I need to eat more vegetables. I'm really bad at that. However, I am eating 1 serving a day and they were always green. So that is improvement and that is fine. And so I also will say and I think maybe that's what this freedom thing is. You tell me, you're the expert on this, but I have a level of awareness and like a different level of acceptance around it than I used to have. So like if I eat the thing that maybe isn't as good or whatever, like I can go into it feeling okay about the choice I'm about to make and come out of it being like, yeah, I ate that thing. All right. Like it's fine. And it's not like this big catastrophe. Like I don't feel the guilt or the shame or any of those things like I used to. Like I used to be like, I've gone through times where I was so scared to eat. And like the cafeteria at school, so for a while I wasn't really eating. Like I was eating like less than 500 calories a day for this stint in university. And it was all about like for me trying to control things and being like terrified of life. But they thought I was stealing food because I'd go in and walk around and like pick up an apple. And in my head I was contemplating like, is eating this really worth this, like however many calories this is? And I would think about it and I'd be like, no, I can make do without it. And I'd put it back down. And I would do this cycle. And so then one of the cafeteria ladies pulled me aside one day and she actually said, like, I know you're not, but they think you're stealing food because you never buy anything. But really what it was that. And so it went from that to now being like, well, one, I buy food, but like, you know, like being able to like, just now I had some ice cream and like, I didn't have to feel bad about it or have this huge thought process before eating it of like, is it really worth it? Am I okay if I do this? You know, how will I think of myself if I put this in my body? Like, how do I look compared to the person over there eating a salad or eating whatever? And it wasn't like that. It was just me and this ice cream and being like, yeah, I'm a bit hungry. I feel like eating this right now, and that's okay. I'll have some chicken later. And it wasn't like a big catastrophe.
Yeah. I think that what you just shared right there is in very many ways similar to so many of the stories that I hear from clients and from other people that I've talked with. Sometimes, like I personally I wasn't in a full-blown diagnosable eating disorder, but I was definitely engaged in disordered eating patterns that if I had continued on that road would definitely have led to a full-blown eating disorder. And so what you said about you weren't in the same community and groups that you are now, you didn't have the same people to draw from on social media and other places like that. I was similar. I had one or two people that I had followed on like Instagram and places like that were kind of talking a little bit more about the food freedom and intuitive eating and all of that, but it didn't really click with me for a while. And it's just been the last couple of years that let's see, it's been 3.5 years since I chose to stop counting calories. And it was similar for me. It did go back to control. There were so many other things in my life during those 5 years that I counted calories like nonstop that I couldn't control. And for me, it was so easy to just control the food, and therefore I could control my body. And if my body looked a certain way, well, then I was worthy and I was accepted. And of course that led to moralizing different foods as, you know, good and bad and clean and dirty and all of that, you know, like I said, feeling morally superior if I chose to have a salad instead of, you know, a fried chicken sandwich or something like that. And I didn't have all of that support and community either. And yet the journey was very similar. And I'm so glad now that there's so much more talk about this than there was 5 years ago. At least to my knowledge, it wasn't as much as it is now. And I'm so thankful for that. And obviously that is why I'm so passionate about, you know, helping people through this. And the more I learn, the more I realize, girl, you have a ton to learn. Yeah, what I want to work on more, and I've been studying this for a while. My husband works with, he speaks to faith communities about domestic violence, how they can start recognizing it in their faith community and helping victims and survivors get out of domestic violence situations and to support them as they're going forward. And that is where his work and my work intersect, because so much of that type of trauma or sexual abuse, anything like that, translates then in many, many times to very low self-esteem, body image issues, eating disorders. And so much of it often stems from some sort of trauma, either that happened to us or that we knew that was happening. And we didn't have the support or really the mental capacity as a child, teenager to process through all of that. So that's what I'm exploring more of right now, is being more trauma informed and how that impacts people.
Interesting. And I just want to say too, like, as you're talking about this and talking about your husband, I think it's so incredible. Like, I don't have children, I have a cat, but every time I see women doing this work and raising children in this sort of environment, like, it makes me so happy and like warms my heart so much, because like your children are getting the things that women like us needed 20 years ago that we didn't have. And it's not that no one wanted to give it. It's just these conversations maybe weren't yet happening, or the way of approaching it looked very different. Like, I remember my mom's like aerobics videos and things like that. And like, that was my introduction to like health and wellness, you know what I mean? And so just seeing like you and other women in my circle, like, kind of really pick up the reins and like draw from those experiences and those traumas to share with our children, that it doesn't have to feel and be the way that it was and still is for so many other people. And like, they'll be able to live that out and show their friends at such a young age to make such powerful changes. And it just like, it breaks my heart that we need that, but it also makes me so happy and so grateful that people like you are around doing this work.
I appreciate you saying that so much. It really speaks to my heart, because I do have this very heavy weight, not necessarily a negative weight, but it is a weight of knowing that I'm preparing these small people to be functioning adults. And honestly, that scares the crap out of me a lot of times, because there are the times I think, oh yeah, things are going well. I love the conversations we're having. And then it's really easy though for my mind to go to the fear side of things and think, but also they're probably going to be in therapy at some point. What is it that's going to happen that I do that they're going to be landed in therapy for? But then I have to also recognize that has popped up, and then it's time to let it go. I'll never be a perfect parent. It doesn't exist. Yes, they're going to have issues around something when they grow up, because they're people, and that's okay. So I appreciate the encouragement that you gave me there, because I am making a difference, and I'm okay and happy to own that, because I do see a massive difference in the way that my parents approached things growing up, when I was growing up, and the way that I'm approaching things with my children. And me making improvements for them growing up just equips them to make even more improvements with their kids if they choose to have them as they grow up.
Totally. And I think the other thing to touch on there, because you said like sometimes you worry and they'll end up in therapy and whatever. And I was like, well, yeah, but also they're probably learning to access tools like therapy as they need it, because they see you reaching out for information and providing these supports to other people who need it. And so I would also look at that as a positive. Or
that's a positive.
Right?
I have not thought about it that way, because for me, therapy and counseling and stuff like that growing up was very frowned upon. Like, you don't reach outside for help, and they would call it like mumbo jumbo and different things like that, and it was very, very frowned upon. And I had no clue how to process my emotions for years. And so I love that you just put that as, hey, they actually will feel good about going to a therapist. And I was like, I like it. Let's do it.
Can I ask, because I feel like maybe granted that shame around therapy, I think, can exist like everywhere, but I have this inkling that maybe also the context of where you grew up has something to do with that. Could you share a bit about, because obviously like I can hear your accent right now, but like, where are you located and where did you grow up and how did that sort of come to be?
Well, let me just turn on my Southern accent here for a minute. I live in North Alabama, which is in the buckle of the Bible Belt, as it's called. I was raised in a very, very conservative family and religious environment. And there's so much there I could go into. I'll keep it fairly short by saying that it has looked very, very interesting for my family, me, my husband, my kids, living in the South. And there's so many things I love about the South. There really are. Not everyone runs around barefoot and votes for certain people. Not all of them do that. And yet it's still interesting navigating things that are traditionally and conventionally Southern, especially for Southern women, what you should and should not do. Seems to me, and I hope I'm not being naive in saying that I think I see it a little bit more in the South, and I've traveled a lot, the kind of oppression around what women should and shouldn't do, like, keepers in the home and always the nurturer. And of course you're going to have children. Why would you not? Just things like that you're constantly expected to. And, or just around service and Southern hospitality, all of that has looked really different for me. And it took several years, honestly, to get to where I felt comfortable sharing my story and living my truth when I knew and know that it does not fit the stereotypical woman and Southern woman. And it's been freeing in many ways. And I feel much more comfortable around, setting boundaries about what people are going to, criticize me over and things like that. But it took a while, and there's still areas that I'm trying to pay attention to and focus on me, myself. How can I show up? How can I do what is best for me in this moment? Because if I can't do that for myself, I'm not going to be able to do that for other people. Not that it's always about other people, but I'm just saying I need to focus on me, and I need to focus on speaking my truth, even though in certain environments, it can be very, very difficult.
You just gave us a very good segue, back to our main point of conversation today, talking about showing up for yourself in the moment and how to do that. And then that with what you had mentioned earlier about that need for control. I think we both kind of touched on that, with our disordered eating tendencies and needing control and, trying to find some sense of security when, at least for me, everything else just felt like it was about to fall apart and I could do nothing about it. And I think that, at least for me, reflecting on it, I think those things really come together to create sometimes a very difficult situation when trying to integrate, for example, I'm thinking family holidays. Because my family celebrates Christmas, and Christmas, as we see it, my mom, she's so sweet. She's there's so much pressure to have it feel like a holiday movie, and that's not realistic. But that's the thing is we see what it's supposed to be. And then thinking about the experiences I've had, and for me, it comes up a lot of well, one, now I'm going and everyone's going to be worried that I can't eat what's on the table. And oh my goodness, you're going to starve because you can't eat this thing. And what can I get you in this and this and this? And my reaction to that is, I feed myself every day. And I knew coming into this that I wouldn't be able to eat everything on your table. That's why I have a frozen pizza waiting for me at home or whatever. So let me worry about that, because I'm sorry, my next thought is, you're only worrying about me to make yourself feel better and to make yourself look good as a host. This doesn't actually have to do with my health and my well-being, because if it did, you'd probably worry a little bit more about the reasons I can't eat those things, and you would have been a bit more preemptive about it. And it's okay that you weren't, because that's not your thing to have to worry about. But then also navigating, when do I choose to opt into that situation, knowing that that's probably going to happen, and how much do I plan ahead of time? And it's that control of sometimes because of me, it won't look the way it should, or also knowing that it just won't live up to the hype that is a Hallmark family Christmas movie. And then can I be okay with that? Can I put the energy into the situation knowing that? And so if we're talking seasonal body food stuff, I think for me, at least, that's the prime area where it comes up.
Yeah. For sure. And I think it's also what you're describing to me when you said that many times people's issue is not necessarily whether you can or can't eat it, but it makes me feel sad that you can't eat it. I feel like I'm not being a good hostess or whatever. And that really is a sign of codependency. And it sure does manifest itself in some unexpected ways sometimes, because I am for you. I am about you. So let me find out more about, why does this affect you this way? How can I best support you? Instead of, I'm going to need you to make me feel comfortable by eating this certain food, or by reassuring me that I am indeed a good hostess, all of that. So it's that can be difficult, muddy, trying to navigate through, especially when it's family members.
That's where it comes up for me a lot, is around Christmas. And it's like knowing this thing should look this certain way. And I mean, if we're talking summer, it's like, yeah, we see on freaking like, you know, I think back to like the old school Baywatch when I'd see like the ad on TV and then like whoever that was, that person that's so popular running like slow motion down the beach and like, you know, I'm sorry, like I got more motion in the ocean than that if I'm running and like, you know, and that's what we see. And it's like, how do we live up to that? Well, I'm sorry, we don't. Like, it's just not possible. And so that's where, for me, at least, it's gone back to, and like you, I love that you touched on the very, very beginning of this, like finding a movement that excites you. Like when I hear friends who are starting out at the gym and they're like, you know, maybe wanting to lose weight, whatever, and wanting to lose weight for people, like some people, that can be a healthful choice. I also, for me, just in general conversation, always then challenge them to say, oh, what movement are you most excited to learn? And kind of focus on something like that. Because, okay, well, when the weight is gone and it's stable, then what's the sustainable thing that's keeping me going and keeping me engaged with this and to learn about my body? And what's the thing that on a day where I don't hit the target or the numbers don't match, I can still feel at peace or neutral or whatever about? And so for me, it's been really important to focus on the movement and the capability. And then we'll say, I don't know, like body acceptance maybe, really followed from that.
I love that, because your question, what movement are you most excited about, or are you, joyful about, or whatever? I love that because it shifts the focus away from our weight, which is something that we really can't control. We think we can for a little while, months, maybe even a couple of years, but we can't really control it, as evidenced by anyone who steps on the scale in between a couple of days and it's gone up by this. It's not. You can't control it. But what you can control is, hey, I'm going to find something that I enjoy. You know, maybe it's flashback to childhood when I played softball, or even getting out and playing kickball, you know, with some friends or kids or whatever. Finding something that sounds somewhat interesting and exciting and just exploring those different options. Those are things that we can take action on and that bring lasting joy. So I think that's a great question.
Yeah, I love that. And so full disclosure, for me lately, it's been very sad because I realized that currently I cannot deadlift. And I am like heartbroken about it because I hurt my back a year ago when I was first learning how to do it. And it just keeps reoccurring. And so I know you recently took time off of weight training. You kept going with jiu-jitsu. I can't even say that properly, I believe. And then came back to it. And it was actually around the same time that I was taking a break. So I was like, oh, hey, look at that. We're like so in sync. And so then I reintroduced all three of my main lifts because my training, like I'm not competing at this point, but my training is geared towards like powerlifting. It's what works best for my body's inflammation and recovery and all that stuff. So I did my bench day, squat day, deadlift day, and I know I didn't brace as much as I needed to on the return to ground, but it wasn't so drastic that it should have been this bad. And I was out of commission for like 4 or 5 days. And so I messaged my trainer and was just like, you know what? It's not worth it if it's impacting all my other workouts. On the plus side, I am now learning pistol squats. And so I had started with those last program and now I'm keeping them going. And like, that is a really cool movement. And even not being able to do like a full-blown pistol, but even to me, like any regression of it is something that, at least for me, I don't see happening that often in my gym. It's not an easy thing to do. It's really cool because it's challenging like my balance and things, which is really important for like the MS side of things. And so like for those reasons, I just find it really exciting. And honestly, I feel like a badass whenever I'm doing them, like even when it's not perfect, because I'm doing them. And so that's been my, like, I have a couple things right now that I'm like kind of focusing on, but that one over the last like 5-6 weeks has been something that I can get really excited about doing. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it just gets me excited.
That's amazing. I love the way that you reframed it. And that would be hard. Deadlifting is my favorite lift of all time. And that would be very hard if that exercise were, taken away from me or not available to me for whatever reason. But I think that's powerful that you reframed it that way. And you're like, here's something else that's also really cool and I love, and I'm going to try it. So I think that's really neat. Kudos.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like I still get a little bit resentful when I see people deadlifting because, like, I'm grieving. I am, and it might not be a forever thing, but it still sucks. Like, this is where we get real and talk about this stuff because, I mean, this, like, we're on so many topics right now, but they all kind of intertwine. Like, all these things are ongoing, right? It's this, like, evolution of our relationship with our bodies and movement and food and all of that fun stuff. But, like, yeah, I am grieving the fact that currently I can't do the same.
Yeah, that's hard. And you're right. You can grieve that and you can be like, yes, this totally sucks. And not writing it off as like, whatever, because it is. That's hard. And it's okay to feel rough about it. I'm feeling rough about it for you right now.
I think it's important we're touching on this real part of these things because it's not like, oh, hey, like, yeah, I'm going to put the bathing suit on and go to the beach and like, this is a beach body and now I'm okay. It's not, I'm going to bring all my own food to Christmas dinner and no one's going to ask me a question and it's all going to be perfect. And it's not like I'm going to start going to the gym and because I'm doing that and I'm eating well, everything's going to always go according to plan and I'm going to feel good about myself. Like, there are days that are shit. There are. And the holiday probably won't always turn out the way we want it to. And, for me, I put on a 2-piece bathing suit. Great. I also have bruises on my stomach from my insulin. So now I got to deal with that. Like, there's always going to be the thing. And I can learn to move through it more peacefully.
That's beautiful. I like the visualization of moving through it peacefully. It doesn't negate the fact that it's hard. It doesn't negate the fact that it's going to come up again another time. And it also allows you to go ahead, like you said, move through it peacefully. I think that's a really, really nice way to visualize it.
Of course. This has been really fun. I feel like we just did like all the things, but I think we brought it full circle. So whatever. And also like, it's meant to be a real talk conversation. So this is not scripted. It's not any of that. And it's just like the tangents that happen in real life. And I feel like we had some really good ones. So yeah.
I completely agree. And thank you so much for asking me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. As always, I invite you to reflect on it all, take what you like, and leave what you don't. If today's episode resonated, comment below or screenshot and share to your social media. And don't forget to tag me at I am Natalie Kristina on Insta. And I would super appreciate if you hit the subscribe button to help make this show accessible to more magical humans like yourself. Until next time, I am your muchly caffeinated host, Natalie of Natalie Kristina Coaching.